Hello, and welcome to the first ever staff talk of the first ever virtual regulatory information conference at the NRC. I'm Alysia Bone, and I'll be your host for these chats, which are really just an opportunity to sit down with some of our NRC employees, talk a little bit about the day, their impressions of the RIC, and some topics of interest. I still see the question and answer or poll queue in the right-hand side of your screen. That's actually not going to be a little talk between me and some of NRC employees. So thanks for joining for today's session, which is about risk deconstructed. So I've got a very esteemed group of speakers today with us. I have Joe Donoghue, Director of the Division of Safety Systems in the Office of Nuclear Reactor Regulation, or NRR. Meena Khanna, who is the Director of the Division of Resource Management and Administration in the Office of Nuclear Reactor Regulation. And Brian Kemker, who's the Senior Resident Inspector at the Vogtle Units 3 and 4, which are under construction in Waynesboro, Georgia. Joe, Meena, Brian, thank you for joining today. So Joe,
thank you, Alysia.
It's great to have you here. So Joe, I want to start with you, but before we dive into today's topic, I want to know, what do you think about the first virtual RIC? How did today go for you?
Wow, pretty exciting. As you can tell, along the way, some risks came true. Maybe one virtual session had a hard time getting started, and maybe during this session there might be some hesitation in the internet connection. We're working our way through it. It's great. A couple of things that I noticed watching the proceedings earlier. This topic is central to a lot of what the agency does. No surprise. I mean, the chairman's remarks brought that center stage. Also, the exhibits are great. If you have time, anybody who's listening, take the time to go to those virtual exhibits. The future is now. Took me a good part of my morning to work through. It's a lot of good material. So I'm really excited. This is great.
Awesome, Joe. Thank you for that. Yes, absolutely. That is something I was thinking today as I was watching the sessions, the plenary session with Margie, and also about, this discussion there of how risk was used, that risk insights were thought about through NIH and the, development of COVID-19 vaccination. So it was incredibly exciting first day of the RIC. So I'm glad you sort of helped us intro into our first topic of these staff talks, which is risk deconstructed. Set the stage for us a little bit, Joe. Risk obviously is not new to the NRC. We have been a risk-informed agency for many, many years. We have a safety goal policy statement, which is, developed more than 30 years ago, that talks about risk considerations. Risk-informed regulations are at the heart of our regulatory framework. So why is, being a modern risk-informed regulator our vision for transformation? As folks might know, we're on this journey to being a modern risk-informed regulator. What is it about risk that's different today than the way we've talked about or thought about risk in years past?
So I've had plenty of opportunity to think about this, because I've been at the agency for 30 years now, and began as a technical reviewer, reactor engineer, and at that point, PRA was its own kind of, I think you heard the word siloed in other presentations, its own kind of discipline, and the rest of us were doing our own deterministic kind of approach. But definitely over the years, that's changed, and we now are getting more and more used to, across the agency, looking at aspects of risk and what we do. And just as you can see, the panelists we have here, and also from some of the other presentations you may have seen earlier today, it's not just in the reactor or the materials, the technical aspects of where the risk is. There's enterprise risk. There's, in our work and being a regulator, legal risks, and risks on how we communicate with the public. One thing that really got my attention earlier today was how much trust in what we do is important to being effective. I mean, that came up in the chairman's remarks. It came up, Dr. Dr. Muscola, I think is his name,
Yeah.
NIH, mentioned that as well, where, our ability to do our job is not just how accurate we are, how many decimal places to something we're calculating. It's also how we can communicate our safety conclusions in our business in order to elicit trust and be effective. And that's a big part of our job. So all those things, and I've been in this particular position, this job, for a little over a year now. And it's kind of where I started, as I mentioned, as a technical reviewer. So as a head of a technical organization, being able to understand and communicate all the technical, but also non-technical aspects of risk in an issue is important. And I think that the NRC as a whole, the staff all the way up to the EDO and the chairman, we're much more integrated. I'll say we're much more, we understand each other a lot more maybe than we did 30 years ago when I was first here, where somebody talked about risk and I really didn't understand what that meant when I first walked in the door. One last thing I'll say is, it's still a goal. I'll say, I think the chairman also said this. I think that being risk informed in everything we do is still a goal. We've gone a long way, but I'll say that there's, being risk smart is an initiative. I think that's gained a lot of ground, but I think it has a lot of potential to get us even better at this.
Thank you so much for that, Joe. Absolutely. So much of what you said resonated with me personally. I started at the agency 13 years ago now as a risk and reliability analyst. And, I learned so much at that point what risk meant to the agency. And now I just seen it continue to bloom and expand in terms of how we communicate risk. As you mentioned, risk communications being so critical across disciplines, which brings me to Meena. I want to talk to you a little bit about what it means risk considerations mean in your world. Joe mentioned enterprise risk, sort of the corporate side of the house. Again, you are the division director for the Division of Resource Management and Administration in NRR. Talk to me about how risk considerations show up in your world.
Sure. Thanks for that question, Alysia. So as you heard from Joe, and I'm just going to be totally honest, when I took on the role here in Durham, and I come from the technical side, when we're talking about risk, being a modern risk-informed regulator, I'm going to be totally honest and say, I don't have to worry about this because it doesn't apply to us on the corporate side. But we are fortunate enough, and I think many of you had the opportunity to listen to Marilla and Candace in the previous discussion, where they demonstrated and applied and showed us how to apply the Be Risk Smart initiative. And what we were fortunate in having was to have both of them join our division. Basically, we had a division meeting, and they basically introduced us to the concept of the Be Risk Smart initiative. And they conveyed to us, hey, this is a technical thing. And as we all know, you can apply risk in every aspect of our jobs here, right? Whether you're here at the agency, whether you're in industry, we've heard that everyone's doing it and it's working very, very well. Joe just mentioned that we're nowhere near where we want to be, but I got to tell you that we're definitely making some great strides. And I think you guys are going to hear more and more. We've heard something we wanted to convey in response to your question, Alysia, is I'm so proud of my division. I'm going to refer to it as DERMA, Division of Resource Management and Administration. But we've really, really done an amazing job. My branch chiefs, management team, my staff, they've done what we're looking for is we are basically looking for ways to improve our processes. How can we implement efficiencies in our processes? How can we also leverage data analytics and being able to make more timely decision making? And then what tools can we develop on our own to be able to help us to do our job and to support the executive team and the leadership team with decision making? So very briefly, I'll just mention one item that we did do is we streamlined our office instruction process. What we did there was we basically shed a whole layer of management review. And what we determined is why not have those managers focus on the more risks, significant initiatives, and allow the others to be able to review those. So small little thing there, but I tell you, it's a huge savings in time and resources. Secondly, we also developed 2 dashboards. We've developed a human capital dashboard as well as a budget. It's a financial dashboard. And both of those we've leveraged to be able to provide our LT updates on where we are in hiring, the budgeted resources. Basically, it's been wonderful. It basically gives a one-stop shop to all the LT and ET as to where we are on hiring. Secondly, the dashboard that we also developed was financials, and that's been wonderful to be able to communicate to the office as well as the divisions where they're doing with budget execution. So those two have been really, really helpful. And then lastly, I wanted to also mention that recently one of our branch chiefs, Kirk Fogarty, who you guys are going to hear from on Wednesday, developed an awards tool, and which again, this has been like so amazing. It's saved us so many resources. It's helping out the leadership team when they're identifying awards. They're able to actually see firsthand in one place what their budget, what their remaining budget is, what they've submitted for awards. And so in a nutshell, I just wanted to say these are just a few examples. We've got plenty more that we've done, and we're looking forward to do more. The other thing that I wanted to also mention is the communication piece. What we've been doing is we've been trying to also communicate to our other Division of Resource Management and Administration organizations across the agency of what tools we're using so they can also implement them and gain the benefits and the efficiencies that we are here in NRR.
Wow, Meena, you guys have clearly been very busy. Lots of great work. What I love about everything you just sort of laid out for us is that, again, our vision for transformation is to be this modern risk-informed regulator. And as Joe mentioned, that doesn't just apply to the, quote, technical side of the house. That applies to our corporate, legal, all disciplines across the board. So, hearing how you're helping us get there in sort of the corporate world is really exciting. Thank you for connecting those dots for us. So shifting gears a little bit, again, Brian, you are the senior resident inspector at the Vogtle 3 and 4 sites under construction in Georgia. I think we have a picture actually of Brian on the job. Can we pull that up? I think it's slide 4. Do we have that teed up? So I think that's not that one, but we've got another. There we go. There's Brian. So tell us, Brian, where are you? What are you doing in this picture?
I am inside the Unit 4 Reactor Containment Building, and that's actually fairly early in the construction. So that dates back a couple of years ago. But so probably near grade elevation, and you can see the wall of the containment, the steel containment there. And I'm standing on some scaffolding and posing for a picture at the time, but typically we'll take cameras out with us to take pictures of different things that we happen to be inspecting at any given time.
Wow, incredible. I'm glad we got to see a little slice of what you experienced as a senior resident inspector there. Tell me, how have risk considerations played out in some of the work that you've done at Vogtle?
Well, I guess to answer your question, Alysia, I have to, look at, I take it from a focus of what we do with the inspection program. And I have to mention 10 CFR Part 52 and ITAC. And for those who don't know, Vogtle Units 3 and 4 are Westinghouse AP 1000 units, and they are the first two plants to be built and licensed under Part 52. Combined operating license under Part 52 enables the licensee to construct a plant and to operate it once construction is complete if certain identified standards in the combined license are satisfied. And these standards are what we call inspections, test analyses, and acceptance criteria, or ITAC. Now, the ITAC identify reasonable assurance that the plant has been constructed and will operate in accordance with the combined license conditions and the NRC's rules and regulations. Throughout the construction process, NRC inspectors perform selected inspections to confirm that the licensee has successfully completed the ITAC. There's principally 3 types of inspections performed by they're under construction. Inspections, program inspections, and we're actively engaged in all 3 of those right now. We perform direct inspections of construction activities that are in progress, like welding of system piping and components, electrical installations, and building structures, and other methods like design and fabrication inspections to confirm the licensee in the end satisfies the ITAC. In addition, we inspect licensee construction programs that would include quality assurance activities, pre-operational testing activities, and readiness of programs that will be required during plant operations later on. These inspections verify the reactor units are constructed correctly and the licensee will have the appropriate programs in place to operate them safely. The inspection program for Vogtle 3 and 4 from the very beginning incorporated risk insights into our selection of what we inspect. We targeted or selected ITAC for direct inspection based on the safety or risk significance of the system's structures and components. As time went by and we gained experience from our inspections, we adjusted our inspection program to take advantage of what we had learned. For example, in 2019 and early 2020, the Region 2 Division of Construction Oversight conducted risk-informed assessments of the remaining ITAC inspections needed to support the 10 CFR 52103G finding. And that's basically what we call the all ITAC complete finding that allows the licensee then to go on and load fuel and to operate the units. We considered multiple perspectives and construction history when we reviewed the remaining inspection plans to determine if the NRC had performed enough inspections in a given skill set, area, or system, and the type of NRC inspections that were being performed. And based upon all the previous work that was accomplished, the confidence that we had gained in the licensee's program up to this point, and the safety and risk of upcoming construction activities, we bundled some, deleted some, and made additions to our inspection plans. And as a result, the construction ITAC inspection program was significantly rebaselined while remaining, our strong focus on reasonable assurance of adequate protection. So all along our process, we've incorporated risk insights into what we inspect at the construction sites.
Thanks for those insights, Brian. And I'm really glad that you sort of emphasized again that in all of this, in the transformation journey and everything that we're doing, our mission is still central. Our mission to protect public health and safety, promote the common defense and security remains unchanged. And it's, we're enhancing the way that we carry out this mission via these things as, risk considerations, other parts of our transformation. Joe, I want to go back to you, hearing these two examples, both from Meena from the corporate side, Brian from very specifically, thinking about how he is working on inspections at Vogtle using risk insights. Can you tell me what are some commonalities that you see in the way that we use risk-informed decision making across these disciplines? What are sort of the things that sort of bubble up to the top that apply no matter what, kind of decision that you're making is?
Well, I think that one thing that we all deal with, and Meena and Brian alluded to, was you make adjustments with the information that you pick up, that you learn. So you might be faced with an issue, and at first blush you think where the risks are, but as time goes on, as you learn more, you may have to make some adjustments. You may learn that things, maybe you reduce some uncertainties in some ways, and you can either add or back off on a level of attention on certain aspects. I guess, for example, and Brian, I wasn't an inspector, you are, but as you're going through your inspection program, for example, I would imagine that you have the inspection that's before you, but just a simple example, you see something else that you didn't expect. It just doesn't look right, and you have to start asking questions. I know in Meena's work, probably more often than she liked to have to deal with, there's surprises. You think you understand what, for example, is how our budget's being expended, but then you're hit with a surprise because there's new work that arrived or some surprise a reduction in the number of resources in an area, and you have to deal with that, and you have to go explain that all the way up the chain and make sure that the enterprise risks are still going to get the amount of attention that they deserve. So I guess that's one thing, is that, again, just to sum it up, the work that we do in all these different areas relies on understanding the situation, and you want to get as much information as you can. At some point, though, you have to kind of take the information you have, make a decision, and go. But that's always a challenge, knowing when you have enough information. The other thing I'll say is that we're all keeping, no matter what we do in this agency, from any of the 2,700 plus people in the agency, safety is where it's at. That's our purpose for being here, protecting the health and safety of the country. So, those are things that are common to everything that we've talked about so far.
Absolutely, Joe. Since this is a little bit more of an informal chat of the RIC, and this is sort of still based on the conversation of risk deconstructed, you mentioned understanding the situation, how to apply this risk-informed decision-making kind of anywhere, even in, personal life. So I think we actually have a picture of Joe after he's made a risk-informed decision.
Oh, no.
I think it's slide 2. Do we have the picture of Joe that you can pull up? Thank you. So Joe,
my gosh, okay.
Surprise!
I wasn't sure you were going to actually use it. It's kind of a joke.
Mr. Risk Taker.
So tell us, Joe, what is risky about this situation, and how did you ultimately end up taking the decision to go down the hill?
So first of all, the risk is don't send things to Alysia that you don't think. So point here was. So this is pretty recent. We got some, I guess, for the first time in a couple of years, a little bit of snow in Maryland here, and took advantage of it. And those are, if you can squint and see real close on my feet, are cross-country skis. And I'm barely moving, but I made it look good. And the point of this was, there's some obvious risks and not so obvious. And this goes back to the point we were just talking about, where you're gathering information, and maybe your first look, and here your first look at this situation is, here's a guy in his 50s trying to do a tuck and go downhill, and he's maybe going to hurt himself. But you look closer, you start doing some investigation, and then you find out he really is taking a risk, because those skis on his feet are like more than 30 years old, and they're glued together. And wow, you don't want to go down too steep a hill with those. So there's some obvious risks in any situation we deal with. From Brian doing his inspections, from Meena and her staff, making sure that the lights are on, and we're doing our work in this office and all over the agency. People get faced with a situation, they have to make a quick assessment. What are the risks? And you think but you have to keep your eyes open, your antenna tuned to additional information. And some of that information you can decide is not significant to the situation. In other ways, skiing downhill with really old skis, you want to be careful and take it easy and be ready to bail out.
Perfect. Thank you, Joe. And thank you for sharing that little slice of your personal life and your
Sure.
But I have to spread the wealth a little bit. Brian, can we pull up the picture of Brian? I think we had a little teaser shot of that earlier. There we go. Brian, what are you doing in this picture? This is quite different than Vogtle. Where are you here?
Oh, well, we were asked to send you a couple of pictures of, I guess, something risky in our personal lives. And well, the photo to the right, I'm actually cavern diving. And that's, I guess, a pastime that I enjoy is scuba diving. And, when it comes to, risk taking, I don't really consider that all that risky because, I have good training, and I practice my skills, and I don't exceed my training or my qualifications. And I have good equipment, and it's well maintained, and I routinely check it out. And I would say the first picture you showed of me inside the Unit 4 containment during construction is probably more risky than the cavern diving. If you recall, that picture showed all sorts of electrical power cables, temporary power cables, strewn about in there, plus all the scaffolding and up in the overhead. And what's not shown, of course, is all the overhead crane activity that's going on all along the time. So I think we have to manage our risk, both, industrial safety perspective on the job site, and particularly on a construction job site, as well as in our day-to-day lives, and with some of the activities we enjoy doing, whether it's downhill skiing or scuba diving.
Well, thank you so much for sharing that, Brian. I love the picture. I'm very impressed with your skill set here, both at Vogtle and also with scuba cave diving. And, you both have really touched on key components of the BRISC SMART framework that we've heard about a number of times today. Spotting what the risk is, different kinds of risk, understanding the situation, managing those risks. Meena, I want to go back to you a little bit more kind of on more specifically NRC topic and the way that we are looking at the BRISC SMART framework. Can you tell me what, especially in your role, but maybe just across disciplines, what do you find sort of most complicated or challenging about talking about risk, about communicating risk? And what are some of the things that you're doing within your team to help people be more comfortable using the BRISC SMART framework, for instance?
A great question, Alysia. So one, I'd say the communications aspect is so significant. I think you've heard from each one of us and from, the session that we heard earlier on the risk informed decision making in the BRISC SMART model. I think at the end of the day, if we're effectively communicating and we're letting folks know what our needs are and what our projects are that we're doing so that people can leverage those as well. Because if you think about it, right, we do a lot of similar work across the agency, maybe different aspects, but a lot of it is similar, whether it's licensing, technical. And I'll give you an example. So in NRR, we have routine meetings. We meet with the executive team on a weekly basis, and then we meet with the leadership team as well. And my folks and myself are involved in those meetings. So if now Joe is, and his team are working on something, for example, like ATF, right? We know that that's a huge initiative that's got a lot of transparency. For example, may indicate, hey, I don't have enough budget needs for it, right? Or I don't have enough resource needs. I need to do my hiring. So what we've done for it, like in that case, in order to be able to help move the process along and get Joe the resources or any other divisions, the resources that they need, we actually in DERMA developed a streamlined hiring strategy. And what that's been able to do is help us to be able to bring staff on board in a more timely or efficient, effective manner. Now, if Joe or another division director indicates that they need contract funds, we've also looked at that as well. And we've tried to be able to deobligate funds really quickly. So I guess in a nutshell, it's really good to be able to communicate. I think the challenges occur when we're not communicating. We're not understanding what folks to be able to help them to be successful. And I also mentioned the fact that it's so important to also, from the corporate side and the other organizations, learn from each other, right? We're all learning from each other. We want to benefit from it. I mentioned the dashboards. I can't tell you how amazing the dashboards have helped us all across the agency with data analytics to be able to make timely risk-informed decision-making example that we have that OCFO and Embark just recently put together. I can't tell you how great it was for my team and I to be able to leverage that information to give insights into the budget formulation for fiscal year 23. So it's just all kinds, in a nutshell, I would say the best that we can do is effectively communicate, let people know what we're doing, let people know what our needs are, and then look for ways to be more efficient and effective while still meeting our mission.
Absolutely. Meena, thank you so much. These are perfect words to kind of close out here. I want to thank all three of you, Joe, Brian, Meena, thank you so much for being here today, talking to me about risk deconstructed. Thank you all out there for being part of this very first staff talk. Really hope you enjoyed this little chat. Please join tomorrow, not only for another full fun day of the RIC, but also for our other staff talk, our Tuesday staff talk, Overcoming the Fear of Failure. We have 3 exceptional panelists to talk about this topic as well. We have Dave Nelson, who is our Chief Information Officer, Stephanie Coffin, who is our Deputy Office Director for the Office of Nuclear Regulatory Research, and Sean Anderson, who is the Division Director of Embark Venture Studio in NRR. So please do come back for that. Thank you all so much for joining today. Thank you again, panelists, speakers, for coming and having this chat with me. Hope you all have a wonderful evening or rest of the day.
Thank you, Alysia.
Yeah, thank you, Alysia.
Bye.
Goodbye.
Bye, everybody.